Okay, I'm just going to read one more, and it's just a couple of pages, so it's a little bit shorter than. This one's called The Day God Caught Jimmy. The Andersons were driving to East Zion Lutheran Church later than usual, and the heat built mightily within the Model T for the family of 6, all in starched Sunday dress, itching and unable to find relief. The lateness had been due to Jimmy, the middle child, who slept late despite repeated wake-up calls from Mother. She and Father had heard him scramble to bed the night before, an hour and a half past his bedtime. He'd been up listening to the radio program through the vents, and consequently, he failed to get up in time for morning chores, which he finished while the rest of the family ate breakfast. They bustled into church, this group of red-faced Norwegians, pulling at their clothes before stepping into the nave. Jimmy's 2 older siblings made their way to the basement, where they gathered their coral robes and fell into line with the rest of the youth choir. Jimmy struggled to latch the bent hook on the back of the robe and required help from his older brother. Jimmy seemed to draw bad luck, if one could call it that, in such ways as this, although his father believed he simply didn't pay enough attention. Once, while sitting at the dinner table, Jimmy had sneezed with such force that he struck his head against the table's edge and opened a cut above his right brow. He'd also managed to slide his head through the banister along the stairs, but was unable to pull it back out, which required his mother's help and her coveted butter to escape. When he first learned to confidently ride his bicycle, he charged through a gaggle of geese along the edge of the field, only to be chased and nipped back into the barn. It was a sight to behold, with the bike wobbling back and forth as he pedaled madly and tried futilely to cover his head with one arm and then the other, screaming in fear with bombastic honks yelling in return. It looked as if a small white storm cloud had placed itself right above Jimmy's head. Such was his luck, deserved or not. With his rope finally attached, Jimmy made his way up to the nave with the rest of the choir. East Zion's layout differs slightly from other churches. The choir was not located up front in the chancel, but instead in a balcony that hung above and to the back of the nave. The choir had to ascend spiraling steps, single file, up the bell tower to reach it. Jimmy sat in front with the rest of the young choir members. His older brother, Gary, watched him for disciplinary reasons. The heat became stifling. After the sermon, Jimmy began to sway as if falling asleep. Gary flicked the back of his ear to let him know he needed to shape up. Jimmy felt the sting as sweat rolled down his back, and he looked up to a tilting ceiling. As they stood to sing "Lift High the Cross," Jimmy began to swoon. Gary tried to get his attention with a poke, but Jimmy continued to sway. He pitched forward. Gary dropped his hymnal and jumped, his legs straddling staggered pews as he reached for Jimmy. The noise and shuffling quickly spread, which led to an off-key exhalation from the organ as the congregation turned and gasped to see Jimmy dangling over the balcony, his arms and hair swaying. Gary grasped just enough of the loose robe to catch him, but the weight was too much and Jimmy slid over the slide. The younger kids bolted into action at the sharp commands of the adults below them. They reached over the front of the balcony and held Jimmy the best they could, but his dead weight was hard to handle. In the congregation, Jimmy's mother fainted at the sight, which caused further commotion. Men moved faster through the church than Minnie had ever seen, and they made their way beneath Jimmy. His legs swung free, and he awoke and began to flail, which caused the hands that gripped him to unclasp. His coral robe engulfed his fear-stricken face as he fell from the balcony. The robe rippled in its descent, and a dozen calloused hands reached up to collect him with a grunt. After the congregation settled, they distractedly finished the hymn off-key, but hesitantly, because the organist wasn't able to keep solid time. When the service closed, everyone seemed to agree that Jimmy had been lucky this day, after all, and credited the Holy Father, for it was his house. Who else could have allowed Gary and the rest to catch Jimmy in time? All right, so that's all I have for you.